These fifth conversations are coming fast now. I've just had my fifth one with Bella. I just have one more to go. And then I'm wrapping up season 3. Discernment comes up again, because it always comes up when me and Bella speak. And we've been continuing from the dance that me and Luke were on in episode 77 of doing and being and doing, and how that relates to fitting in and belonging, and how it relates to habits and rituals, and how it relates to cleaning, and what jobs you take and why. And we throw in some prehistoric man versus historic man as well. So this is another lovely conversation. I'm always I feel relaxed and warm whenever I say bye to Bella. I really enjoy being in conversation with her, meandering about. We throw in some masturbation as well. So, it's an interesting conversation. Let's just leave it at that and see whether or not you will find some tankespian. I sure hope you do. Good.
Hi.
Well, hi. How are you?
I'm in a big transition time.
Big transition time.
Yeah.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
All of it.
All of it.
Spiritual, probably kind of staying how I am.
Mhm.
But physical, mental, emotional, yes. All of that. A lot of moving parts, a lot of changes. Trying to establish positive rituals for myself
Mm.
and routines that feel like they feed me.
Mm.
And trying to do so neither at my expense nor at the expense of those around me.
Mm.
And trying to navigate how to do it in a way that it doesn't convey conflict, but rather conveys collaboration.
Mm.
And I find that challenging sometimes.
I've given so much thought to rituals and ceremonies and traditions and habits, because I find that rituals can turn into habits when I kind of do them mindlessly, going through the motion. Well, then it's just a habit rather than a ritual, or because ritual for me it has presence. I have to be there. I have to be in the doing of whatever that ritual is, because I can brush my teeth without
Out of
being
habit.
there. Tell me about it. As a habit, I do it because I need to do it because you're supposed to do it, but I'm not there. So that's a very typical habit for me. I could make it into a ritual. I could make it into part of a self-care ritual. I don't, but I don't. I'm just not there. Most of the time
Or
I'm not there.
maybe it is self-care ritual because brushing your teeth is caring for the health of your body.
Yes,
But
but I
you're not
don't.
thinking I am making
No, precisely.
self-care
So
right
for me,
now.
it isn't a self-care ritual. It's a self-care habit I have.
Mhm.
It's like, because I do it without life force. Can I say that? Because this is the thing. The Twilight retreat I attended in the end of July, we did some ceremonies, which I would say I don't really know what the difference is between a ritual and a ceremony, but they were filled with life force. There was life force there. Me brushing my teeth, very seldom is life force kind of present and aware and engaged and flowing through. Um,
So I have a question. Does everything have to have life force?
no,
And could we sustain that?
no, it doesn't. And when because I think I'm doing the same thing as you are in the sense that I am experimenting with playing with rituals and ceremonies and finding finding a cycle that nourishes me, that doesn't cost me, and I don't want to. It's like I can say I Sweden is a very secular country. I haven't been brought up like religious or anything. When I was a foreign exchange student in the US, my family was they were, I don't know, Seventh Day Adventists or some type of
Oh gosh,
Christian,
yeah, that
whatever,
yeah.
something. Maybe that wasn't, well, something like one of those uh Christian kind of spin-offs. And saying grace before dinner can definitely be a habit that you're just supposed to do. And it can be a ritual that you do with life force. And the difference, I would say, is huge. And probably there are some people who, like, today I did it out of habit, tomorrow I'll do it with a lot of life force and presence. But I think a lot of people just do it out of habit, like brushing your teeth. And then it's like,
What's the
it
point,
probably
kind
does
of?
nourish a little bit, but could it nourish more? And I actually find the saying grace as a principle. I mean, I haven't started to say grace, but I've been picking leaves and doing a little bit of work in the garden, and I've started to talk to the trees or the leaves and asking them for their permission. You know, can I take this leaf? It's like, no, that one didn't want to come off. Okay. Can I take this leaf? Yes, that one did want to come off. Okay. So it's a way of being in conversation and relation. Whereas if
Interacting.
I just do,
Mhm.
it's kind of just me. I'm not engaging.
That's so interesting. I just kind of, you're making me wonder if I have any habits that are sort of not automatic, because I can't think of anything that I do so automatically that I don't put like some kind of a meaning, or I don't see. I probably do. I just haven't thought about it. But I guess it also has to do with my work is so intentional
Mhm.
that I feel like sometimes I need a little bit of mindless habit too, because everything in my work is about assessing the moment. appreciating what is there, what potential is there, what limitations are there on both mine and the other person's. And it's really kind of an intense being present kind of thing. And so I guess in a sense that also feeds that need for life force in what I do.
Mm.
Um, and yet, I think it's possibly because I'm gonna shortly have a new environment that I am trying to build habits that make up for my lack of joy at the moment. And so, or rituals, not habits. Sorry, I know you make a distinction there.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe it's just me.
no, it is, and if even if it is, it's really interesting. But the way I meant building positive rituals, and for me today in this moment, is more geared towards focusing on joy, focusing on meaning for myself rather than meaning for a unit I belong to. Or like a cluster of people I belong to. Because I have noticed that in the time that I have been in this cluster of people, I have a little bit prioritized the cluster. And it has felt like the right thing to do, and I don't regret it. But now it's time to look for that meaning that is more tailored to me, is a
So
little bit more selfish and entitled to it.
she says and smiles. When you say build rituals that helps you focus on joy, can you give me an example? Because I don't know. I don't know what that would mean. I don't know what that entails.
Be up in the morning and enjoy the act of making my coffee. Enjoy the little ritual that the coffee making is. Enjoy the taste of it. Savor it. Then go for a walk and enjoy the place I'm in, the environment, the fact that I can step outside and go for a walk in a really pleasant place. Come back and pick up my violin and practice without compromising my comfort, but rather with prioritizing it. Um, Play in a way that feels the most ergonomically comfortable because it gives me the nicest sound and it tires me the least. And so instead of the habit of making the coffee, I suppose, might be exactly what you're talking about. instead of going for a walk in order to get exercise, instead of picking up the violin to practice because I have to achieve something, I'm focusing on the how.
Yeah, it sounds like to me like you're sprinkling your everyday life with the intention of enjoying it, of finding the beauty of it, with finding the pleasure in it.
Mhm. And it's probably even more important because of the amount of grief I'm experiencing at the same time. And so it's like almost like a antidote.
Mm. Or like ballast. It's like without the ballast in a ship, the ship wouldn't be able to I don't know what do you call it when a ship runs? When a ship is doing its ship thing, you know? The ballast keeps
Things grounded.
things grounded. It keeps it on an even keel. It keeps it able to weather storms and big waves um and stuff.
And so the habits are a little bit like the ballast. But the ballast can be simple dead weight, or it can be some kind of a useful, practical thing that can be a part of the quality of life on the ship.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say this because I've been for the past few months I've been writing in my little kernel journal in the mornings that I want to care for me and I want to care for my home. And it's kind of the same thing I think that I'm after from what it sounds like that you're after this. It adds some type of appreciation for the life that is.
Yeah, it adds meaning.
I'm getting mixed signals from within my system when it comes to meaning. And I have been for a couple of years. I have 10, 12 years ago or something, I kind of woke up and found the meaning of my life to be to make a positive imprint. And I'm kind of dance between meaning and purpose and like those two terms, they're quite intermingled within me. But I also wonder if it's like too much of any good thing is not a good thing anymore. And if you're desperately searching for meaning, trying so hard, you're efforting in an effort to find it. It's like, no,
You actually
no,
lose it.
you lose it precisely. It's like, that's not it. Um,
It's more like allow instead of make it happen.
Yeah.
Allow it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Have it be a presence.
I have an adult student. No matter what I tell her, no matter what she tries, her first response to anything she tries is, that wasn't enough, or this wasn't right, or it wasn't what you meant. And I had such a funny discussion with her. And I was thinking, what is your favorite dish that you make for yourself? And like she just told me the dish. And I said, what if somebody told you, came to look at you, prepare it, eat it, enjoy it, and told you it's all wrong?
Mm.
And she was like, well, that would be ridiculous because it's my dish. I make it, I eat it, I enjoy it. And I said, yeah, exactly. And I think when we start efforting, it's because we no longer turn into finding out what feeds us and we're trying to somehow satisfy some kind of an outside expectation. Sometimes, not all the time, but part of efforting feels like sometimes it can fall into that,
Mm.
where instead of being focused on what works for us, we start imagining what the right thing should be and trying to attain it. And then we've lost the plot because we've lost ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. I've been pondering a lot of about doing and being and doing, as well as belonging versus fitting in, and the
Mm.
difference between those two. And I wonder if this isn't, I can apply my thoughts about those two pairs um, onto this as well. It's like habit for me is doing that's far from the center of my being because I'm just doing it. Whereas ritual is right at the cross of them. It is doing infused by my being. It is being infused by my doing. It's like you can't even tell them apart, maybe. But it's like it's 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 close to both of those axes of the doing and the being. And belonging and fitting in is the same. Fitting in is me far out on the edges of desperately trying to do the thing you're supposed to do to fit in, which has me so far from the center of my being
Exactly.
that it won't work. But when I'm belonging, I can do and I can be, or I cannot do. It doesn't matter because I still belong. So it's very close to that, again, to that center.
So when you automatically brush your teeth, do you not belong to yourself?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. And I would say I'm going to go out on a limb and say you can do. I'm going to put in something. It's like masturbation can be just this thing, because it can be out far from my being when I am just doing it to come.
Really?
Give me that release. And it's like, yes. And I can do it in a way where my being is so engaged and the doing is so engaged that it is a totally different experience from
The
this.
doing can be like should be an extension of the being, especially in
And it
masturbation.
is, yes,
Right.
and it is not always not
Really?
for me.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Because I can turn it into this mechanical thing.
Oh, I lose any desire when it's mechanical. I like just completely
Yeah.
turn myself off if it's
Yeah.
mechanical only. If I don't have a plot and a story and an imagination, forget it. I might as well just not.
Yeah. I can make it happen, but
I'm jealous.
well, I don't know that you should be,
I mean,
honestly.
like in a funny way. Like, oh wow, I don't think I can. I like
Yeah, yeah, and I think I'm jealous or avundsglad, as we say in Swedish. We actually don't say it in Swedish, but because it's not an official word. Avund is envy or jealousy, and
mhm.
avundsjuka is jealousy or envy. Avund is jealousy, and sjuk is sick. So you're sick with envy, but then you're
Mhm.
putting glad instead,
Which
which is
is glad,
happy.
right?
Yes, which is glad. So you're happy with
You're like,
envy or jealousy.
yeah, it sort of envious in a positive way.
Precisely. It turns into envious in a possibility. It's like, oh, I would love that too. And I'm so
Exactly.
happy that you have it. Um, and it's like I can it can be dancing Lindy Hop. I had I had a couple of therapy sessions with Dominic on the concept of Lindy hopping, where with a few of the Lindy Hop leads that I'm dancing with, I am in the mechanical space. It just, something is off. It just doesn't work. And then with a few others, it's just wow. And the my experience is that all of me is engaged. Uh
That's one of the most erotic ways to be.
yeah. And it begs the same question as your question about life force. Can you always be there? Should you always be there? Is it
I
desirable?
think if you don't try to effort to it, if you don't do efforting towards it, but rather allow it to be, then you can. But if you should yourself into it, then you
You're
cannot.
screwed. Or not screwed.
As it might be the case.
It might be the case. Precisely. It's
And
like,
so, how you approach it, I think, has a big effect on what the outcome can be. If
mm,
you say to yourself, I should make this meaningful no matter what, now you have another chore to fulfill,
yeah.
another box to tick, another item on the to do list. And gosh, I hate to do lists.
Mm. And that's somewhat my feeling of what habits can, like, they're on that side of the fence. That it's like, okay, you're supposed to
Yeah.
clean and brush your teeth and take a shower and
I guess I haven't been tamed enough into those things. I've always rebelled enough to like sort of not allow it always.
mm,
Like I could live like a pig.
I do too. It's actually really clean here at the moment because I was supposed to have guests this weekend. So, I hired my daughter to come and help me clean. which I hadn't done for a couple of months because I really don't. I just, well, I
Speaking
can.
of that,
Mm.
sorry, in my new place, I am actually trying to find a way to enjoy cleaning.
Do you
So,
have a way?
um, I think it's because it's my nest.
Mm.
I try to approach cleaning from the point of view of this is not like an annoying mechanical task. It's rather an act of making my nest hug me
Yeah.
and enclose me in a pleasant way. And I'm this is not something I'm very good at because I vehemently hate cleaning, but I love having organization and coziness. And so I am trying to do cleaning in the name of the organization and causing coziness rather than as, oh, it's Friday and I have to clean. Mm, It's not Friday, it's 11 p.m. and I can't sleep and I want to make this place nicer for myself. So I'm going to go dust because right now feels like I can do it without the feeling of dread.
Mm.
And so I think, in a sense, maybe by allowing myself to do it when my psyche feels ready instead of pushing myself to do it at a certain time, that opens the possibility for it to be a ritual rather than a habit. Like for me, allowing my body to tell me when it's time. Now it's not forced by the clock or by societal expectations or by the day of the week. Now it's brought in by, oh, I'd like to feel cozy in here.
And I
And
wonder if that isn't what life is supposed to be, which maybe I'm shooting myself there, but it's like that organic flow. You move when your body tells you, hey, it's time to move. You eat when your body tells you, hey, it's time to eat. You drink when your body tells you, hey, it's time to drink. You sleep when your body tells you, hey, it's time to sleep. You dance when your body tells you, hey, it's time to dance,
take a
It's
bike
like,
ride when your body tells you that.
yeah. And the way that we have organized society, the way that we have civilized ourselves, not so sure. Well,
I
pretty
mean,
sure it's not necessarily serving us,
not on individual level. It's
not
serving
on
us on a
individual level.
collective level.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure about that either. Well, I
It,
am. Yes, you're right. It is serving us on a collective level because there's more of us than there's ever been. But you can kind of take the meta perspective on that and say, yeah, but that's kind of like we've gone into cancer mode.
Mhm,
There's a bit too many of
mhm,
us. Not
mhm.
so sure it is serving us from that perspective.
So I can't remember which one of Yuval Harari's books talks about how evolution is not there to serve the quality of the individual. It's there to ensure survival of the species,
Yeah,
often at the expense of the individual quality of life.
yeah,
And I think he really had his finger on the pulse there.
yeah. I think that's what Richard Dawkins speaks about in The Selfish Gene as well, which I haven't read, but I think it's
And so, like,
similar.
because we are in this society where we actually tend to individuals, to each person's needs and we make those needs valid and often important. That flies in the face of how evolution works. And so there is this conflict or disconnect between the two that we as people, as persons, constantly try to just bridge. Because both of those things are sort of like prominent in our existence and yet sometimes contradicting to each other, sometimes incompatible. Because if I get so focused on flowing with my time, then it's not going to serve those around me. If I decide to practice my violin at 2 in the morning, my neighbors might be bothered by it, even though my body is perfectly ready to practice that. And so we keep on having this dance between those two sort of entities. And I feel like the best place to be in that dance is that ambiguous in between where anytime we can swerve either way. And then our topic, our favorite topic of discernment comes.
Okay. Magic.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I wonder about prehistoric man, which has been around for way longer than historic man, if you look at it that way. And wonder at the dance of the individual versus the collective, of the I have so maybe this is a tangent, but it ties back to what we were speaking about before. I have a sense that today many of us are efforting in order to try to find meaning, to try to assign meaning, whereas my belief is that prehistoric man found meaning everywhere. The meaning was apparent. The meaning was there
I don't
because you
know
were
if
in
prehis
communication with nature. You were thanking the leaf and the frog and the rabbit or the grass or the berry.
I don't know if prehistoric man thanked the rabbit that he caught and roasted and ate. I think he was just like, oh my gosh, okay, my existence is no longer in peril or in
I
danger.
don't I don't think so. Cuz
Say
prehistoric
what?
man is a lot of what I mean prehistoric man in essence is indigenous people, aboriginal
Okay,
tribes. So it is
okay.
living differently. It's living in a way that we don't as part of modern civilization. And there are still people around who do that, even though there are not many and they have to actually struggle quite hard not to fall into
Mhm.
the culture that is globally pervasive.
But I think those people had a very different condition than we do. There were a lot less of them. There was like just
Yes.
everything else. I don't know
Yes.
if we can compare ourselves because we don't
I
live in
think
the
we
same
can.
condition. You
I
do?
think we can. Yeah, I
Okay.
think we can. And I think that part of the problem is that modern man has set aside the laws of nature for ourselves. So there are too many of us so that it's not possible to live in that way anymore because there's too many of us and we live differently. We do live under different conditions, but I would say that those conditions are actually kind of self afflicted. We live under conditions where food is put under lock and key. For millions of years, everything on this
Was
planet,
food.
everything is food for everything in essence. Also, humans who die turn into all sorts of things, because it's all nourishment, it's all food for someone. And no food was ever put under lock and key. Food is put under lock and key today. And it has been for the past thousands of years in a way that it wasn't before. And we're messing with the laws of nature. We're kind of playing outside of the rules of nature, which is possible to do for a short period of time. But I believe we're approaching the end of that time. We cannot continue to play outside of the laws of nature because we're fucking everything up royally.
We are. And I feel like what I hear you say is that that has the effect on each one of us and how we effort.
Yeah. Because so to tie it back, this is part of the ritual and meaning finding that I'm dancing with at the moment. Me asking the leaf if I may take it off the branch is me playing with this and trying to find myself within the laws of nature again, which we have always been. We have just kind of intellectually placed ourselves outside of it.
I
Which
hear
works
you.
for a short time, and then it doesn't work anymore.
That's exactly my concern, because pre-pandemic, when I used to go and walk, one of the ways I tried to have a positive impact was that whenever I passed somebody on the street, I looked them in the eye, smiled, and said hello.
Yeah.
And at that time, maybe not unlike what you're talking about, asking permission to pick the leaf, gave me a sense of putting something positive out there, making some kind of a connection with another person. And it felt really good. But I was also very keenly aware of how negligible its overall positive influence was, and how little I, as who I am, can really do to influence that. And that at the end of the day, there are such big meta forces that drive our society that we are very much a part of. I mean, we're both sitting in houses that are built instead of where trees used to be. We're both like driving cars and having phones and technology and all that stuff that it had to come instead of something else. And I feel like it wouldn't be exhaustive if I didn't acknowledge that. That I wouldn't be fully honest with my predicament if I didn't acknowledge that while we each feel like we're efforting and we feel a bit lost, at the very same time, we are really, even the most like conscientious among us are really over consuming.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
unless you live
I
in a
mean,
hut
right,
in
you,
Africa somewhere. Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
gonna do that.
No.
We're gonna continue buying the next phone and the next computer, and that all comes as at a cost. And the cost comes back to us in the form of feeling like we have to effort.
That's a good that's a good way to bring that back.
Because in order to attain that next computer and next phone and next gadget and next thing that is going to give us meaning, we keep on having to do these habits that suck the meaning out of it.
Yeah, and it's I'm there's a Swedish private finance forum, Rika Tillsammans, Rich Together, um, that my friend Jan runs. And this year, but mostly this past few months, when the electricity crisis and the electricity prices is just going through the roof in like ridiculous ways, even though Sweden is a net exporter like 95% of the time during a year, we've been paying like 40-50 cents per kilowatt
Hour.
or whatever it's called. I don't even know the units. And it's been interesting to follow the threads about this, about what can you do to cut back on your electricity bill. Because all of a sudden, when the electricity bill is not just one time or 2 times as high, but 3 times or 4 times or 5 times as high as the last few years, it's like, ooh, you start to kind of, this isn't really comfortable anymore. And people have been doing all sorts of things. I mean, I wear my woolen poncho and wrist warmers, and I have quite cold inside. And
Interesting.
people have been, how long can I when do I have to turn the heat on? Can I turn the heat down a little bit? Can I turn off the automatic towel rack dryer or the floor heating or the spa tub or and boom, 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 boom. And it feels as if kind of the general consensus is everybody in that forum who's been playing this game is basically without really noticing can cut their electricity usage by 20% without even trying that hard.
Do you know what's interesting? I grew up as a child in that consciousness because in communist Bulgaria,
Yes.
we had outages
Yes.
and we didn't actually consume without being conscious of consuming.
Yeah.
We didn't consume other than because it was practically necessary in practical way.
Hmm.
So the conspicuous consumption was so much less.
Yeah.
And when I look at the way I budget everything for myself, be it food or electricity consumption, energy consumption, I'm already doing things that probably most people won't do.
Yeah.
That some people will frown upon because I'm trying to like lessen my print,
Yeah.
my consumption print. And I guess I just always thought that that was normal, but I'm rather maybe the exception in that.
Yeah.
Like when my kid wakes up in the morning and insists on being in a short sleeve t-shirt with the heater on, I'm like, nope, put on a sweater.
Yeah.
And my kid is like, I don't like sweaters. Like, too
Tough
bad.
luck. Tough luck. Then you can be cold.
Like,
Yeah.
but it's funny. This my child who's grown up with me, even they don't necessarily ascribe in the same way.
Hmm.
That because we in let's call it Western society grow up with so much plenty
Yeah.
and with so much available, we forget to appreciate it. And that's why I was kind of a little surprised when you said food is under lock and key. Because food has also never been as abundant as it is now. And that lock and key can actually be circumvented. I mean, I don't know about your locality, but there are 3 entities in my town that are within like very easy access that are trying to give away free food in order for it not to get wasted. And they on Facebook keep inviting people, please come, show up, take. Even if you don't like have financial hardship, please come and take this so it gets used because it's already been grown and made. And so the scarcity is not there.
But I was talking to Mandel about this. It's some type of skewed abundance. It is warped. It
It
is
is.
not true. True abundance is there's air to breathe, there's sunshine outside, there comes rain, there is trees and greenery and whatnot. Whereas, and that we really don't just like, there's a lot of, I don't even see that. But even though you're right in the sense that we are, I mean, a large part of us are eating ourselves to death. But it's still under lock and key because
It is.
you have to buy it. You have to earn money in order to make a living, in order to be able to pay for food and housing and whatnot. So we are in that wheel.
Mhm.
Whereas you can go out into nature and find mushroom and snare a hare or pick nuts. The nuts are falling here. But it's like people buy chanterelles in the store instead of go out into the forest to pick them. We buy raspberries instead of going out into the forest to pick them. We buy lingonberries or cloudberries or whatever it is instead of going out into the forest pick them.
Because we're too busy working to earn the money.
Yes. And
so that whole
spiral,
Mhm.
spiral, which means that we're trying even harder to find meaning because we're not outside in the forest communicating with what is around us
which
and what is true abundance.
in which I actually now understand what you mean about prehistoric man. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's how you meant it. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's how I meant it. Precisely. It's like this
Yeah.
being a part of.
Yeah, I hear you. It's true. And yet, neither you nor I will be able to stop its course, are we? At this point, we either engage or don't survive it.
And eternal optimist that I am, I also do believe it is a mental shift. First and foremost, it is a mental shift. It is a belief. And if it is a belief that we are outside of nature, it is a belief that we are the pinnacle of creation, it is a belief that we don't have to, play by the rules of life and death. We can.
In physics.
It's like no, we actually can't. But it is a belief at the core. So I'm not saying no inventions, no technology, no travels, no nothings. Like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying what happens if we invent from the place of we are a part of, not apart from. And I do believe that is a belief that is, it's like it's a millisecond to shift a belief. Like it can be, let's put it that way, because I've had those instances where I've had an insight that just whoops, flips my life around. It is possible. That's what happens. You have a thought and then boink, it shifts. So,
Which kind of is another way of describing what I'm talking about when I talk about positive rituals.
yes.
Is how did you put it just now? From within.
If we're a part of or apart from.
A part of or apart from. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
that's that little distinction.
Yeah. And I mean, I have to mention the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, which I mentioned a gazillion times before.
Yeah.
But it is. It's like it's fun and interesting for me to find those dots that connect, to find the both going forward and going backward, to find like linking things up and seeing how it kind of makes sense on a larger scale, on a meta level. And I don't know. For me, I actually do link it to this personal the past month, 2 months, this very personal journey right now of what do I do for a living? Which clients do I work with where that crosshairs between my being and my doing is just there? And what do I do? Which clients do I work for where they're not interested in any of my being? They just want my doing. And how do I navigate this How do I? Because that's a little bit also like, does everything have to have life force? Maybe it doesn't, right? But too much of any good thing is not a good thing anymore. Maybe I need the balance, but if I only have clients who are just interested in me for my doing and not my being, I'd better have some other, you know,
To balance it out.
communities or precise settings where my being is actually the thing that's it's like,
So
yes, come here with that,
I learned
please.
I learned this really interesting lesson in my late 20s, early 30s, because I had a student whom I felt like I was there for my doing. And it felt very, of course, I was a teenager, so she fought me
Mm.
to the nail. And then at some point, she just kind of glided away and got interested in a different instrument. And it was a sense of, oh, I don't have to fight her. And also a sense of, oh my gosh, what a waste of my being.
Mm.
Only 10 years later to find out that in her perception, I had been a life thread for her because her other circumstances had been so dire that I was the only person who actually fought back, who didn't turn away from her.
You engaged.
I did. And she didn't let me know at the time, and I was too young to know at the time.
Mm.
But how do I know when somebody engages me for what I perceive as only my doing, that they actually don't revel in my being and that they're not extracting some kind of a life threat
For
use
that.
out of my being? And who am I to really judge whether they're engaging me for this or for that? And am I gonna go on my assumption of how they do it? Or am I gonna focus on what I give and the heck with what happens?
Oh, that's interesting. Now you just made it all flip flop again.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
I live in this flip flop. I never like
Yeah,
feel
I
like I
do
can
too.
settle my pendulum is always ning
Yeah,
ning ning.
I do too. Which, I love doing that. I love being in that. Um,
So I think when we feel like we're asked to do something for our doing, it is only our perception. And that perception is sometimes right and sometimes not. And whether we want to put the effort into figuring out how we are perceived by others, why don't we just put the effort into how we do it for ourselves?
and I think that's partially the the place that I'm exploring at the moment is just that is where first of all what is my perception, how is it nourishing to me, am I doing it solely for the money, am I doing it for the relationship, am I doing it for the experience, am I doing it for the challenge, am I doing it because you're supposed to.
Or are you doing it because it satisfies some aspect of your creativity that actually is the thing that nourishes you?
And so this is where I've noticed the difference between there is a different quality to the experience for me of when I am doing something from that point of belonging versus when I'm doing the same thing, ostensibly the same thing, from the part of only my doing. that fitting in part. I'm doing this
Mhm.
so that. It's like asking for the pat on the head, kind of, "Oh, good girl, you can do this thing." And I haven't been so discerning about that before because I can still really enjoy the making, the doing,
Mhm.
but it does have a different quality of nourishment to me. It does come at a higher cost.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like you saying you don't want it clean because you're supposed to clean. You want it clean because you like it when it's organized and cozy. It's like, yeah, you're still dusting,
Yeah,
logging around the vacuum cleaner, polishing the floors or whatever it is that you're doing, right? It's the same doing, but where it comes from really makes a big difference.
absolutely.
So I'm I'm playing around with this while at the same time I can feel in me that I am picking up on all of these signals from society at large about increase in electricity prices, about food prices going up, I don't know how much, about inflation, about you'd better make sure, and the stock market is crashing, and so all of that makes me say, yeah, I'll do that gig as well, even though maybe it's one of those doing gigs more than the doing being gig from where I perceive it. So
And
I'm
yet,
I'm like I'm I'm flip-flopping a lot. Let's put it that way.
another word for that is you're discerning
Yeah.
because you, instead of automatically saying yes or automatically saying no, you're flopping and weighing why and
Yeah.
how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think in that ambiguous uncertainty and unsettledness is where life is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And would it be good for you to refuse everything? Or would it be good for you to
No.
accept everything? No, neither
No.
one of those would be good.
No.
You're actually doing exactly what would make it meaningful. I have, in reality, caught myself inventing a story to make a job more meaningful to myself, whether that story is true or not. Because I sense the need to take the job, and I also
Yeah.
sense the need for that job not to be purely only doing,
Yeah.
because that was going to be a little bit like I would slowly kill myself if I did that.
And it's just perfect. That's precisely what I think that I am doing as well. Right? It's like, yes, I said yes today to helping somebody where it's a mix with a few people I know that
Mhm.
I can be of the value that I want to be.
And
And
a few
then,
who do not.
and a few who do not, a few who just wants the doing. Um, but it's like, but there's enough there, sprinkle with this. Oh, but it's, electricity prices are going up. I'd better make sure that
Mhm.
I have enough food
For
on
a
the
tough day.
table or
Mhm.
money in the bank, right?
Yep.
Um,
But also, like, when you're clear with yourself of exactly
yeah,
why you're doing it,
yeah,
when you're not in an internal conflict, when you're not deceiving yourself, I mean, I can say, okay, I'm going to take this job purely for the money. It's going to be awful. I'm going to go there expecting to not be treated like a human, but like some kind of a skivvy. And then I'm going to take the paycheck, and that paycheck is going to give me the meaning that I need. It's going to
Yeah.
make me feel like, oh, I took the paycheck and now I don't have to worry about my electricity bill. Now I can run my heater. Okay. Now, if I chose to just approach the job and try to make it meaningful, I will be disappointed.
Mm.
And if I approach the job and say this is purely for the money because I don't have a job this month that gives me money plus meaning, then I'm going to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
And my expectations are going to better match what's out there. And then I'm going to just know why exactly I'm doing it. And there are months in which I feel like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm not going to take this. And there are months like in which I feel like, oh, thank goodness there's this job just for the money.
Mm. And
Because
thank you for
without it,
that too. Yeah. Thank you for that too, because that just made me realize I have said no to things where it's just no.
and this time it's a cautious yes. Just
Yeah.
go in it knowing exactly why and what.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel taken advantage of, disappointed, out of touch with yourself. And
Oh,
in
and
that,
there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn everywhere,
of course,
in everything. Um,
if we just suspend the expectation and the self
yeah,
deception.
yeah,
I mean, even when I make a story about how this is going to be meaningful, I know it's a story I made in order to allow myself to feel like I'm not being oppressed by accepting something. But I know it's my story.
mm,
And I don't feel like fast, hard rules can really help us feel like we're being and not doing. We're only being when we have discernment on how to interpret the rules each time.
I had last night I drew 2 cards from a deck of cards that I have that are animal, and they're gorgeous. And one of the cards was the shark, and the little text on the card was trust your instincts to discern the truth of the situation. And I went, discern, discern. It's my favorite word. Um, but it also says, it also speaks about how the trust for your instinctual signals can be modified and distorted by conditioning, especially childhood conditioning, when you're told that no, what you're feeling isn't right, etc. And then it says, take the time to tune into your gut feelings using slow, deep breathing as an access code. Listen with all your senses to discern what your body is telling you, and use your intellect to interpret whether it's a conditioned reaction or an instinctual response. And that's precisely that thing about being honest with me, knowing that you're telling a story or not, knowing why you're telling that story or not, feeling into it. Is this a conditioned response or reaction? Where does that come from? what's that story? What's that belief? Or no, I'm kind of free. My body, all of my senses are informing me, and then I can make that decision. And I can still say yes or no,
Precisely, yeah, of course.
but it's kind of a looser yes or no. It's a freestanding yes or a freestanding no. It's not rooted in this is what
Which
has been going on.
which is the best yes or no? The only
Yeah,
yes or no, because the rest of it is sort of tainted by other things that make it
yeah,
not adamant.
yeah. I
There's
like that. Yeah,
there's like a saying that it's either hell yes or no.
yeah.
And I like that too. Like, if I'm gonna be tepid about a decision, unless I can make it hell yes for any reason, I'm gonna make it
It's
a
a
no.
no. Yeah,
Unless I can find a reason to make it hell yes. And that reason can be my bank balance. That's
yeah,
allowed. That's
yeah.
perfectly okay.
Yeah.
We're
And I
being
think that's an
responsible.
important aspect to add on to that,
Mhm.
so that it doesn't have to be this revolutionary personal development thingamajig.
Right.
That's the only reason why you can ever say hell yes.
But then
No,
you're
it's not.
being hierarchical with your reasons, which is not
Yeah.
cool.
No,
Like,
and I am. Totally. There's a
bingo.
total hierarchical order about what reasons are good enough and
And
which reasons are not so good. You know,
maybe,
again,
maybe allow
conditioned.
this house of cards to crumble a little bit.
Yep. I'm busy. I'm busy crumbling it.
Good.
I'm definitely busy crumbling it. And it's like I had what, today's Tuesday. Yeah, I had Dominic's session yesterday. And we've been going for almost 2 years now. So 80 plus something sessions of 1.5 hours. And it's as if we we work, and kind of, come to an epiphany, insight, bigger shift, pivot. And then we work on continuing, come to another one, and then we work on it. It's like we're building on the others. And I can see how right now I'm at the precipice. I'm right on the edge of some type of volcano of some sort. Something is coming. And I can draw it back to February sometime, I think, is when we kind of started on this particular journey, which wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't had an epiphany back in February, which
Mm-hmm.
started back in, the summer, last summer.
Right.
So um, it's quite a fascinating um, journey. It's like a
It is. And
adventure.
it's funny because it's like both forward and upward, but also in circles.
Totally in circles. Totally in circles.
And
Yeah.
that needs to be okay.
Yeah. And it's in circles on the same plane
But spiraling
and
slightly.
going up.
Yep.
Precisely. So I can be a couple of times, I can be on the same. It's like nothing is really happening. But then, whoop, if you kind
Mm-hmm.
of go
Mm-hmm.
a little bit
Mm-hmm.
higher and a little bit and a little bit higher.
And sometimes it just needs to not even be higher. It needs to be the
Yeah.
same and yet in
Yeah.
a different hue.
Yeah.
Because higher is also part of hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I think we're very conditioned to think of like order up, good to
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself can be a really limiting factor.
Yeah.
That's where we start shooting ourselves.
Yeah, precisely. But I also think that it helps me to think in terms of movement and in terms of
Of course.
movement in different planes. You have the x-axis and the y-axis and the z-axis, and I can be moving in all of those or just in one of those. Uh, so that there's a dynamic um, happening there.
Yeah.
And now and again, I come to a complete standstill, which is fine because
Yeah.
sooner or later,
It's
one
going to
of those
shift again.
axes will shift. It will
Exactly.
shift. It's not possible not to. And then then there's movement again.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and I wonder if that's kind of what it feels like when I get these total, because I do have a lot of grief still pouring out of me. And when I do that, and when it just comes out, that's what it feels like. It feels like for a brief moment in time, I just stop and I just sense. So it's like in those moments that, you know, last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, seldom much longer, that, the desperate crying. But it's like that's what those feel like. It's like, okay, here I'm just letting that grief pour out.
This is actually really pertinent because I am living with right now the goal of not suppressing the grief, but with the goal of being present in it anytime it comes. And my kiddo hates it
Mhm.
because my kiddo doesn't want to be in the grief because my kiddo is in a different moment. And I feel like unless I allow that grief to come out and allow it to be visible to me and by extension to those around me, I am going to get stuck in that cycle of doing and not being because a grief is a part of me that if I suppress it, I cannot be my full self.
Mhm.
And my kiddo perceives it as I'm past the grief. Why aren't you moving past the grief? And it's, of course, my kiddo is a teenager. It's okay. I don't think they're past the grief. And that's okay too. But my grief is highly uncomfortable to my kiddo. And yet, for me, if I suppress it, if I don't allow it to be there, the price is going to be much higher to both me and the kid later.
Mhm.
So I'm doing this, paying now instead of paying later. And I think the society in which I live here is not well geared towards being compassionate and empathetic to grief. It's much better geared towards suppressing it and shoving it under the rug.
Yeah.
And
Our
then
entire civilization is.
right. And then we wonder why so many of us walk around feeling like we're these marionettes that just
Yeah.
can't put meaning into things.
Yeah.
And if we suppress a whole aspect, a whole SWOT of our existence and being, and to me, grief feels like one thing that our civilization is rather inclined to want to suppress, which
Highly
is
inclined to
why
suppress.
when you say I have to deal with grief, I'm immediately like my ears are perking and saying, oh, well, if you feel like you haven't dealt with it, or if you feel like you don't have ample space to deal with it, of course you're going to feel like you're not being what you're doing,
Yeah.
because that's operating with 3/4 of your engine.
Yeah.
And grief
And I
is
think,
part of your engine.
yeah. And I think that is the grief that I'm working on is I'm paying later. Now is later.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
isn't current grief.
Well, I will
Basically,
say,
it's not current grief. Basically, it is from childhood conditioning. It is a lot that I have not let come. I have suppressed. Oh man, have I suppressed.
likewise, mine is
Yeah.
not only present. Mine,
Mhm.
my present grief is the thing that activates my past grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's true for all of us. And so I think that's where we almost have to stand up to society and to civilization and say, screw this.
Yeah. It's time.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, and it brings me back to what me and Mandel spoke about in our last conversation, where he talked about a friend of his who asks, instead of asking how are you, asks, how's your heart today?
I think that's a Persian way of
Maybe it is.
asking.
It's just
Yeah,
brilliant.
it
So
is.
I've been asking myself that a couple
Mhm.
of times since then.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's lovely.
It is lovely, and it is an easier place for me to acknowledge all of the colors of, all of the sensations of right now, because it can be, bright and dark and hot and cold, and there's some sweet smelly roses and some turds that really stink. It's like, and all of that can be housed by my heart. um and just, so that's one way of not, that's one way for me of not suppressing. That's one way for me of acknowledging, of inviting in what is.
Yeah. And then we are being instead of doing. Then even brushing your teeth
Yeah.
is being.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's exactly like how I'm trying to go about is
Mm.
to create a ritual that is both an antidote to the grief, but also like allows the grief to exist within itself.
Well, and that's a brilliant thing. That's what me and Dominic spoke about yesterday, about being the container, not being contained by others, by conditioning, by shoulds and societal norms and whatnot, not being contained, but I'm a container for myself, for what is there, which is like, yeah, all of a sudden, it's like that's another way of saying that thing about the freestanding yeses and nos. It's like when I'm the container, I'm the one who says yes or no based on my discernment right now. What's valid? What's relevant? What's emotionally appropriate?
Exactly.
How's my heart right now? What am I containing? How am I doing that thing? How much can I take? What
Bingo.
can I harbor today? And what can't I harbor today?
And
Um,
in that respect, some days, like, you are so full of that taking a job for the doing is almost a relief, actually,
yeah, yeah,
because you don't have to go into that really muddy and complicated and messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being, because being
Yeah.
is complicated and messy. And
Yeah.
sometimes doing a job is simple.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so even you can kind of see the value in doing a job as a respite from
Yep. Yep.
the muckiness of
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. I had a friend who said that, and doctor said, well, you should come to me so that I can give you sick leave. And she's like, no, not. That's my job. Going to work is what keeps me alive because it
Mhm,
is that respite, because it is that,
mhm.
oh, here I don't have to deal with that other shit. I can just
Precisely.
be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's fun. So, yeah, which again circles back all the way to the start about this. Well, maybe now and again, mindfulness and mindlessness, you can kind of have a
They
little
both
bit of
have
both.
they both
Yes,
have a place in us.
they both have a
Exactly.
place, and it's all of it has a place
Mhm.
because it's
And
all a
and
part of what
maybe
is.
that prioritization is the problem. The latter is the problem.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
when you feel compelled to be mindless, and your internal self says you should be mindful about everything, and you need to say, yeah, fuck it, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
mindless,
Which is
and allow
interesting.
yourself.
Yes. And that is because we have ascribed meaning. We have ascribed meaning to the mindlessness as being less worthy, less
Bingo.
whatever. And we've ascribed meaning to the mindfulness. Oh, this gorgeous, lovely thing. Everybody should be that.
Uh-uh.
Precisely. So there's another type of meaning where, again, we
Mhm.
can, yeah, discernment is key in so many ways.
So
Be-
speaking of mindless habits, I have them. I just don't mind them. Like I feel like there is a
yeah.
day that I'm gonna listen to the same silly spy novel for the 57th time while I'm playing a silly game on my phone that is completely
Mm,
mindless.
yeah.
And I am gonna be okay with that
Yeah.
because I have spent so many hours being and in the messiness.
Yeah.
And
I
I
bet.
need to step away. And I didn't waste time by doing it.
No.
I evened out, I balanced out the emotional load of the day.
Yeah.
So we can brush our teeth without having to like have it
Feel
as a
guilty
ritual.
about not
Yeah.
doing it mindfully. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's fun. And again, it's like, oh man, the stuff that we humans come up with, you know, oh, it's fun. It's like, it's comic, that now and again
And
we kind of
tragic too.
trip ourselves up over so much stuff. And that, I think, a lot of that, I actually think, has come with the civilization. There's a
It,
lot of that isn't inherently human. It's not born into us. It is
it's
cultured.
societal, cultural.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always ask myself when I am on my deathbed, am I going to regret that I brushed my teeth without meaning? Like just to like use your, you know, or am I going to regret that I sat down and listened to my stupid spy novel while I'm
Yeah.
like zoned out on a silly phone game? Or am I going to regret having shoulded myself into
Yeah.
complete misery?
Yeah.
What am I going to regret more? If I
Yeah.
look back when I'm about to like take my last breath, what am I going to regret less?
Yeah.
And let me do that.
Yeah. And you can turn that around as well. You can turn it around because I think that's a powerful exercise to do. And you can also, when you're faced with a decision, a yes or a no, you can also kind of catapult yourself 5 or 10 years into the future, turn around, look back, and say, which of those makes me regret less the choice I didn't make, or most proud of myself for what I did do, or whatever. It's like, so
Exactly.
that thing of kind of doing a forward retrospective
Yep. Forward
is,
retrospective. I like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It can be very, very powerful. Again, especially or possibly only if you actually are honest with yourself. And if you are in tune with what's your entire system telling you, what's the
Precisely.
sensory, so it isn't a conditioned reaction, but rather, okay, that one. So, yeah. You know what, Bella? This is our 5th conversation.
I know. I'm looking
No,
forward to the group one. Tell
I
me about
am
the
too.
person that I'm going to meet that I haven't yet.
You will be meeting with, just make sure that I don't say wrong. You will be meeting Özlem. So Özlem is a friend of mine from Sweden who I met at a leadership training a couple of years back. And we've been having some interesting conversations that are kind of on the same line as yours and mine, but has a totally different vibe to it. We've been speaking a lot about parenting and learning and challenging yourself
So
and stuff
Aslam
like
is a
that.
parent.
Eslam is a parent to 2 girls, a little bit younger than yours. Um, so I've given him some good tankesbjörn around parenting. I like him because he's born in Sweden of parents of Kurdish descent.
Interesting.
So he's very aware of that. And we've had some really interesting conversations about that. And it always um it's been fun to walk that knife's edge with him, because that's what it feels like for me. I'm born in Sweden of parents of Swedish descent, of parents of Swedish descent, of parents of Swedish, like forever. So what can I say? What can't I say? And with Özlem, I can say.
So interesting that your home environment makes you question what you can say more than your adopted one.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think is a result of all of this political correctness that's going around. It's like, what
I
can I
think it's
say and what can't I say? What will I be judged for as being a bigot, or a man hater, or a racist, or what, trans, a turf, or it's like, whatever can I be charged with or labeled with, that just makes me go, shit, all of a sudden that solid ground is not so solid anymore. And I do want to speak from that place as well.
yeah.
But
Okay.
again, I want to be discerning when I do it, because I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to harm anybody, but I do want to explore that territory too.
Mhm.
So that's who you will be meeting on
I'm looking forward
Saturday.
to it. That
Yeah,
sounds interesting.
yeah.
And we can also continue having conversations. It
We
doesn't
will
have to
continue
be
having
via
conversations.
podcast or for a podcast,
No, no.
but
I'm
I
pretty
have
sure.
highly enjoyed this journey,
Yeah.
and I feel so not even conscious of the recording anymore. I'm just like
Yeah.
jaded to it, which is a good thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
thank you for having opened this opportunity. I
thank
really
you for
appreciate it.
thank you for playing with me.
Fun.
It is fun.
And
It's
then
fun.
I will be ready at 3 p.m. your time on Saturday. Same link,
Perfect.
right?
Same link.
Okay.
Yeah. See you around.
All right. Have a good rest of the week.
The same. Bye bye. If you enjoy this type of conversation, this type of meandering exploration, check out the Tankesbjörn community on Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/tankesbjörn, or you can find it on tankesbjörn.com/community. We have monthly Zoom calls where we most often throw in a word or a phrase that I've come across when I set it up. And then we meander. And it's always the most fascinating experiences. And I so cherish them. So if you want to join, please do. It's also a way to support the show. Because it tells me that it's one way, let's put it that way. It's one way of letting me know that there's value in this for you. And I really hope there is. There is plenty of other ways to do that as well. Sending this podcast on to a friend is one, or leaving a review, or writing a comment, or finding me on Twitter, or wherever you want to find me, or however you want to show. Yeah, your appreciation or your tankesbjörn, perhaps. What you get. I'd love to hear you. Tell me what type of tankesbjörn you get from this. So, I hope to see you around. Until next time.